Hi, and welcome back to another My Chat With by AussieTheatre.com. Today's guest is an extremely accomplished theatre director and lighting designer. His show, American Psycho, has gone from the Hayes Theatre to the Sydney Opera House and is currently playing for the next 2 weeks. His second show, Crybaby, is opening there mid-July as a return season from its initial 2018 run, also at the Hayes Theatre. My name is Gabby, and this is My Chat with Alex Berlage. Hi, Alex. How are you today?
Going well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I just wanted to have a chat about some of the shows you're working on at the moment. You've got a really exciting year from the looks of it. You just opened American Psycho at the Opera House. Can you tell me a little bit about taking it from the Hayes to the Opera House?
Yeah, it's quite wild. I mean, when we first did the production back in 2019, we were basically taking a show which was designed for like Broadway size theaters and cramming it into the tiny Hayes theater stage, which is like about like 8 meters by 8 meters and only seats like 110 people. So it's kind of been this like strange experience of like taking a big show, putting it in a tiny theater, and then taking a show that we made for a tiny theater and putting it into a big theater again and making a big show. So it's like it's been quite odd. And one of the reasons why I think American Psycho worked really well at the Hayes was because of the intimacy of that space and the fact that the audience was kind of immersed in the story and the world of Patrick Bateman. So yeah, one of the biggest sort of I suppose like challenges for us in terms of transferring it is how do we get that same immersion and that same sort of hard-hitting kind of storytelling in a space which is 4 times the size. And so that's been like quite an interesting experience, I suppose.
The set for American Psycho, you and Isabella worked together on this unreal revolving mirror neon explosion. How did that come about as a concept? Because obviously the original production doesn't have anything that chaotic.
Well, it kind of came from the way like both Isabel and myself, whenever we kind of work on a show, and well, actually just across the whole design team, whenever I work with the design team in the show, the key thing we really try and figure out as soon as possible is what are we actually trying to say with this show? Like, what is at the core, what is the core statement, what is the core provocation that it's trying to present to an audience? And we sort of kind of quickly worked out that the core provocation of this was that there's this obsession with this endless cycle of trying to feel satisfied, and this world is basically like keeps promising it keeps promising us this sort of notion that we can find satisfaction and through spending money here or doing this activity, but it's kind of this like it's every single time you think you found what seems like full complete satisfaction, there's something that actually undermines that. There's always a catch. You can have all the money in the world, but you can be the most unhappiest person because you have no friends, or you can have all the friends in the world, but you don't have any money. There's always a catch to an element of satisfaction. So and with that, there's that self-obsession, which it sort of is so prevalent in the work. So we sort of looked at this idea of mirrors and mirrors being the ultimate kind of physicalization of sort of one's obsession with self. The image of sort of narcissism, that's so prevalent in sort of like lots of sort of like classical paintings, etc. But we sort of knew that there was this cycle, and we knew that there was mirrors. Like we kind of come up with sort of cycle and mirrors, and we're sort of dancing around these ideas. And one of the things, I'm a serial Pinterester, and one of the we just like constantly Pinteresting ideas, references, and then we suddenly stumbled across this sort of the idea of revolving doors, which a revolving door is like essentially the iconic entrance to any form of big skyscraper or office building. It's this idea that you revolve in, you revolve out. And I suppose our lives are somewhat like a revolving door as well. And sort of Patrick's life is somewhat like a revolving door. People come and people go, and some people get stuck. So we sort of basically ended up with a mirrored revolving door, I suppose, and that's the sort of the biggest kind of I suppose reference point, and it's also, you know, the idea of kind of this spinning sort of mirrored world also kind of we felt was a really great tool to use to heighten these moments of surrealism that are so found throughout the work, you know, and helps us sort of, you know, kind of take the audience in the journey of, is it real or is it imagined, I suppose.
And you're taking Crybaby to the Opera House as well, which
Yes,
must be
which is insane, because it's like that happened like back in 2018, and I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure that show is like done and dusted, and then like, nah, we're back.
which I think is amazing. There's something about that show that is so unique.
You know, whenever I kind of approach shows, I'm like, I just don't want them to like look or feel like every other every other musical you see of sorts on Broadway. You know, I think we can be much more naughty and much more and have a lot more fun with the way we actually present these worlds. And they, you know, often the necessity of when you stage a show at the Hayes, it means that you know, when a script calls for a bedroom, you actually can't put an entirely furnished bedroom on stage like you can, you know, in the Lyric Theatre or at the Star or the Capitol. Like you have to actually really distill when it asks put a bedroom on stage. What do you actually need to put a bedroom on stage? But also, like, you know, can you actually be more clever and work out what is this scene about, and what is the central, what is this scene about, and what is the central struggle of the character in this scene, and then that actually tells you all you need to do in terms of what is actually required from the props and the setting and the sort of interaction with the world.
How have you tried to kind of subvert the traditional music theatre stereotypes? There's been a lot of stuff you've done in regards to kind of removing that heteronormativity from main stage music theatre, which I think is really fascinating and admirable.
I mean, well, I think it's kind of interesting. It's like I suppose the thing that we're doing in our productions is nothing new in terms of theatre. I think it just so happens that in Australia, the majority of our casting decisions are made based on the productions that were cast essentially 10 to 20 years ago. So it's, you know, and that's just actually a problem with the way that our commercial musical theatre scenario is set up. Is these casting decisions are made by teams back in the early 90s, or the early 2000s, or even further back. So with that, we inherit the set of values that those directors and teams had in that time capsule. So it's, I mean, in terms of the conversations of what we're doing with sort of theatre in terms of plays and the likes, it's nothing new. It just so happens that, you know, the incredible opportunity to create new visions for musicals in Australia is few and far between. So we can actually, you know, start to play sort of catch up with, much more adventurous and sort of considered casting that reflects the society to which we find ourselves in.
I have to ask too, when you kind of look at American Psycho and Crybaby on paper, they seem a bit full on for music theatre plots. You know, you've got that toxic masculinity, that violence of American Psycho, and then that absurd, almost right-wing leaning Crybaby gang warfare. How would you convince someone to come and see one of those two shows if they were a little confused or skeptical about the premise?
I'd say that like both shows have so many shocking like revelations about the world we live in that you'll end up sort of coming and you'll laugh at just how messed up the world is, and then you'll leave the theater and you'll be like, oh crap, okay, yeah, I probably should do something about that. So I suppose it's kind of like, it's the most fun you'll ever have realizing just how messed up we are. And so it's, you know, it's pitch black comedy. It's, you know, you look at, you know, you look at some of it, like, you know, any sort of your sort of, you know, your great sort of comedies on your sort of streaming platforms, and, you know, like the greatest comedies are the ones that actually have the hardest hitting social commentary behind them. So I suppose, like, you know, one of, like, yes, there's a lot of kind of, you know, conversations about the social commentary and the politics of these shows, but the way that it actually deals with these issues is so incredibly funny, and often the best way to have a, you know, a difficult conversation, you know, you often get told, is to give someone a like a warm cup of tea. So I'd say this is, like, you know, the best warm cup of tea to sort of really sort of look at some fun, you know, and hard hitting, you know, issues. Yeah, and I think, like, the big thing that whenever I make a piece of theatre, the thing that I always remind myself, and I've said this to anyone who will listen, is in an age of streaming services, I need, like, as a theatre maker, I need to be able to rationalize why I'm asking someone to leave their house and pay X amount of dollars for this, in comparison to Y amount of dollars for a monthly Netflix or Stan subscription. And if I can't look someone in the face and tell them why this is better why it's worthwhile spending money on this, and it's better value, and it's worthwhile spending your time and energy to sit in a room full of strangers for 2 hours on a cold night, then fundamentally, you know, I failed at my job. And so I think it's, you know, it's about making works, you know, or really sort of, you know, supporting works that are theatrical and can, you know, and can only happen in the context of, you know, a theatre. So yeah, that's the big thing that sort of, yeah, we talk about with the creative team, is we need to be able to sort of really back that it's only something that can happen in a theatre in this moment.
Thank you so much for your time, Alex, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time too.